Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Time for another edition of Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with Phil Putney and myself here to talk about a little countdown clarity to retirement. Timing, really, I guess, some retirement preparations. Some good timing
is everything.
Yeah, some good timing on that. Location. I don't know. Maybe timing.
Timing when it comes to retirement.
Yeah, might be, right?
And different decisions. So
yeah, very true. Very true. How you doing this week? You doing all right?
Doing good. Getting ready to head out and do some more camping. So.
Oh yeah. Where are you heading this time?
We're going down to Ohio.
Ohio.
A campground down in Ohio. South would be, I guess, Eastern Ohio we go to.
Okay. You know, like the oldest, silliest jokes are the ones that stick in your head. You ever notice that? I'll never forget that Ohio. I always ask, why they call it Ohio? Why? Because it's high in the middle and round in both ends. And it's like a cartoon joke from like Bugs Bunny or something, right? But it's like always stuck in my head for Ohio, so. And I was telling my wife that the other day, and she looked at me like I was stupid. I'm like, it's a dad joke. Just, and she's like, I don't even get it. Dad joke. Yeah. And I was like, no, it's round on both ends. It's, it's a zero. It's a no. And she's like, oh yeah. So I was like, wow. Right over her head. So I was like, see, maybe it wasn't that bad of a joke. You didn't even get it. So she's like, no, it was just that it was that
you missed
bad.
The punchline.
Yeah. She was like, just that it was that bad. And I was like, all right, fine, whatever. But that's what spouses are good for, right? Is to give you a hard time. I think we give each other a hard time on a regular basis. So, but that's all right. Well, let's talk about some timing and some preparations, right? Going camping, timing, preparation, right? Got to be prepared, have the stuff in the camper, watch the weather, right? Timing.
Yeah. So. Yeah. If you can control that to the extent you can.
Yeah. Good luck there.
Speaking of, we're trying to leave this afternoon and it's not looking good with the rain. So we're going to try to beat it before the rain starts coming down. So.
All right. Well, let's get rolling then. Let's talk about this stuff. All right. So the first one, when and how will you be debt free? Well, hey, that sounds like a pretty good idea to prepare and time this, right?
Or should you be? I mean, that's, a lot of times the question that comes up of, especially when you look at a mortgage, now, I mean, other types of debt, consumer debt, student loans, if you have those, yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea to make sure you've got those paid down before you get to retirement. But, the mortgage is generally the big question of debt when you get to retirement. And do you want to pay it off? Is that the right strategy for you? Understand the pros and cons. And this is a lot of times the question that comes up when we're talking to clients and planning is, well, when should I start planning? Is it too early?
Right.
And it kind of depends. You go through different stages, but, I would say a minimum of 5 to 10 years out.
Right.
To start looking at some of these options, especially if you're talking like that. I mean, that's could be a big obstacle if you want to get it paid off.
Yeah.
If you're a year from retirement, sorry, depending on what your mortgage is, it might not be able to be done. But if that's a goal and you're 10 years out, well, let's set a plan to get that done.
Well, we've talked about before, Phil, like not even just the house debt, but right now with interest rates the way they are, currently, if you're carrying, let's say you're carrying, a large credit card balance of some kind, and at 29% or whatever, and maybe your investment, you've got some investments out there that are only netting you 7 or 8. Well, you're actually losing yourself some money. So maybe it's worthwhile to shift that focus currently, right? And start getting down that high debt. And then you could kind of maybe reinvest, like let's say you're pumping into your dollar cost averaging, right? Like you're pumping into your 401k or something. Maybe it makes more sense to to maybe peel that back a little bit. You still got to pay your future self, but maybe mathematically it makes more sense to reduce that big debt first and then build back up the 401k. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming down to having a plan. Sounds like a great strategy. The challenge I would have there is that too often I see people start that and then something happens and they don't pay down, but they're not contributing. And all of a sudden, 5 years later, it's like, well, what happened? I stopped or lessened my contribution. Now I'm behind there. Yeah. And I didn't get the debt paid off.
So how do we kind of manage that?
Whatever your strategy is, have a plan and then have a regular check-in, especially if you're working with an advisor, that should be a discussion you've had. That should be part of your plan. And on your review, when you're looking at where are we at on the plan, how are you doing with that? Where's the debt at? Is it on target to what you wanted to do? Are you still contributing at the level lowered for the 401k or whatever the investment is.
Yeah.
Did you get a raise? I mean, if you got a raise,
True.
do you want to start contributing more? I mean, that a lot of times that's a great way to accomplish paying down debt is if you get a raise rather than just kind of let that disappear in your spending, which it will.
Right.
I mean, if you don't account for it, it's just going to go.
Bye.
Designate that to, hey, the raise we get, we're going to, put it towards the debt if that's your goal.
Okay. All right. Well, we talked about this last week. So if you've been checking out the podcast, but on this list of counting down timing preparations, we do you have a structured plan to generate your income in retirement? And we won't go too far into this, but because we just did a whole episode on income, but still, you got to have this on the list, right?
Yeah. And the biggest risk here is that if you don't have this strategy kind of laid out up front, if you're thinking, well, I'll just wait till I get to retirement to figure out what I'm going to do with my investments,
right.
and all of a sudden it's, January 1st of 2022, and you're thinking, all right, retirement day, I'm done,
Yeah.
And I've got all the money in the highest risk, investments in my 401k. Now I'm going to change things around, and boom, all of a sudden you're down 30%. Now it's all turned on its head. No, I mean, fortunately, things have started to come back in a relatively short time, and I don't think we're out of the woods yet. We'll see. But I mean, that's the point of this planning and strategizing is if you're going to retire 5-10 years out, you should run the math, already figure the plan out to know, okay, I want to retire on this date. I'm going to need to take X amount of dollars per year. So you should strategize and pull some money off the table to make that more conservative up front so that you're not worried about this on that date, that if things go the wrong way.
Yeah, for sure.
And you don't want to take everything and go conservative, but have a plan. It's got to be a good plan.
Absolutely. So, all right. So on our countdown list, Phil, when should we start drawing Social Security? Clearly needs to be on the list. That answer is different for everybody, but it needs to be on there to be addressing when's the right time for me.
I mean, especially for a married couple, there's a lot of ways to combine the benefits. Having an overall plan, to look at how much of your income you want guaranteed, something we talked about on the last podcast. I mean, Social Security is that guaranteed income source. A lot of benefits to it. It's got a cost of living adjustment, spousal benefits, survivor benefits. I mean, there's a lot of benefits in Social Security, so don't just say, well, I'm going to get it as soon as I can at 62. It might be the right strategy, I don't know. Run the math in your scenario. What does that look like? When are you going to retire? Are you going to continue to work after 62? Well, then maybe not at 62, because
I mean,
concerns, but
to apply that kind of 62 across the board, which we've talked about ad nauseum, is just not the best move. And you could be costing yourself a ton of money. So make sure that it's on your list to talk about with your advisor, and then find the right strategy for you to do it. Don't just wait till the last second or show up at 62 and go, hey, I'm eligible. Let's turn it on.
Right. Or don't pay attention to what's going on in the news and saying, oh, they keep talking about it going broke, so I'm going to get it before
I'm going to get it. Yeah, I'm going to get
that's the big one. Understand the pros and cons of how it works.
Yep.
Run the math out, talk about the risks with your advisor, but have a plan to when you're going to file for Social Security.
Well, speaking of, you talked about having a plan, for Social Security, like with the spouse. Okay, well, what about retirement dates for you and the spouse, right? So let's have that on our list to count down, because, I'm 5 years older than my wife, and she's like, I don't know, that 5 years might tick me off if you're not working and I am, Yeah,
I mean, it's a discussion to have with a spouse, if there is an age difference, especially, does the younger spouse retire at the same time as the spouse that's older? Can you do that?
Yeah.
Probably the biggest concern in that scenario is healthcare.
Yeah. My buddy did that. The older
spouse is at 65. Well, they're okay from a healthcare standpoint. They've got Medicare now.
Yeah.
But if the younger spouse is 5 years younger, well, they're 60s. So they've got 5 years to self-fund healthcare, on the marketplace, or I mean, that can get really expensive.
Yeah, my buddy did that. He got himself in a pickle. He because he retired military benefits, right? And he's got VA, but his wife was like, "Why? So she's like, "I don't want to keep working," and they were in their 40s, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So now they're in a real pickle because she demanded to not work as well. And so they've been, so they've changed their lifestyle a ton, but he knows it's going to hurt them in a few, as they, the longevity kicks in. Right. So, I mean, she's covered as well. she's covered as well.
Have a strategy.
You got to have a plan. Right?
Healthcare is a big piece of that decision. Typically, I see with kind of the staggering out.
Yeah.
Especially if there's a younger spouse and they're not Medicare age yet.
Yeah.
And huge. I mean, sometimes it's just one spouse has had it, they're done. The other spouses, they're still okay at their position. They're
okay, and they may love it.
Maybe they're working at home now. I mean, that's a big part of what's come out of the pandemic. A lot of people are now working remotely.
Yeah.
So they can start to do some travel and the other spouse can continue to work. I mean,
jealousy. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's a human emotion. Yeah. Jealousy can kick into play a little bit. Why do you get to goof off and I'm still working? Right. So just make sure you're having that on your countdown conversation, especially if there is an age difference.
Or, I mean, if you plan on doing travel or any other kind of activities, I mean, if one spouse is now retired, the other one's not, I mean,
can't do it.
Can't really do it. And, unless the spouse working has a lot of vacation or is able to work remotely. So a lot of factors to play into that decision.
Added it. Well, and again, this is a countdown list, right? For the things to have on your preparedness list.
You're building that plan out.
Yeah, there's an interesting phrase. Preparedness list.
Preparedness list.
There you go. Do you have too much risk in your portfolio for your age?
We talked about that a little earlier in talking about the income, right? But do you, as you're looking at this timeline for retirement, are you in that red zone? A lot of times it's referred to the 5 to 10 years prior to retirement. Mm-hmm. If you are, make sure you understand, when I retire, I need X amount of dollars. Where is it coming from?
Yep.
Am I going to retire and then delay Social Security? So I need a lot more, in those first 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is in retirement. Then make sure you're making the right risk adjustments with a certain portion of the portfolio. Again, we talked about the buckets we use, but for us, that'd be funding that soon bucket. So we've got enough to make it through the next 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, taking a ton of risk,
lower volatility, you still have to have risk for inflation, but position it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. Taking a ton of risk at 65 just, doesn't make us, I mean, you still got to be in there, right? Because you're 20 years in retirement or whatever.
You got to keep up with inflation.
But taking a ton of risk at 65 or 60 may not be very smart like it was when you were 40. So, and we've talked about that, right?
You don't have time, right? You've lost the advantage of time now. So
that father time thing.
The father time, that time clock.
Him and Mother Nature, man. They I don't know. They get together and gang up on us, I think.
They make it interesting.
Yes, for sure. Income and expenses. What do they look like in retirement? We actually just did 2-part series, 187 and I think whatever the last one was on this. So, but certainly you need a strategy.
Yeah, and I mean it's you don't have to get down to the nitty gritty of this dollar went to whatever it was. I mean, I understand
my Snicker bar habit,
kind of what it is. That's right. I mean, hey, you've got to have some just mad money, right? X amount of dollars per month is just you don't have to account for it. It's just gone. It's spent. Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
But understand, hey, I need whatever it is, where is it going to come from? Have a plan.
Yeah.
My encouragement here, especially as you start to near retirement, if your plan, quote unquote, is to lower the lifestyle, then try that out for size, right?
Yeah.
Don't if you're living on 120 a year, so 10 grand a month net right now, and you're running the math and thinking, we can get by in 7 a month in retirement.
Try it.
Plan for that. Try it out.
Yeah.
See how it feels and if it really works before
you may like it.
Jump into it and say, here we go.
It could be like the tiny living thing. You could, some people do the tiny living to go from a big house to a small one. They're like, oh, I love it. I don't know if that works the same if you go from 10 grand a month to 7, but you might be fine, but try it. That's a great point. Try it.
I always encourage, especially if there is a shift in income expectation in retirement. Try that out ahead of time. Don't just jump into it and say, we're going to make it work.
Yeah. Before you concrete,
maybe not.
Before you concrete it into the ground, go ahead and try it. Right.
I mean, to the point of your friend you were talking about, they're now how many years into it and they're, I don't want to say stuck, but they're now in a position that for them to change it, they're either going to both have to go back to work and, totally change things or dramatically reduce expenses. And I don't know their scenario, but you don't want to be in that situation if you can avoid it. So,
he's got and it's a catch-22 for him because he's as ex-military and combat veteran, he's got a lot of medical issues and he's so much happier and healthier living the way that he's living. But the stress is going to start to get back at him. Right now, the stress is gone.
Right, for
he's just
other
loving
reasons.
it. But the money stress is going to catch up at some point because he's got his guaranteed disability and pension. So I think they're fine as long as that stays there. But I just don't think it's not ideal, right? Right. I think being forced to take the spouse to go into retirement earlier than expected. I think he was hoping for some remote work as well, and it just didn't play out that way. But have a plan. Final one here, and we'll wrap it up, Phil. What is your answer? What is your call and response, if you will, to rising taxes and inflation? Maybe even staying where it's at, even if it does drop, it's still going to be there. We're always going to have inflation.
Yeah, I mean, inflation is cyclical, like everything. It goes up and down with cycles, and just like a market, interest rates, I mean, it runs through these cycles. So,
yeah.
But the bottom line is you will have inflation throughout retirement. We run through several cycles in the market and inflation through your lifetime and into retirement. So have a plan for it. Taxes, again, is one of those things. Don't go on the assumption that I'm going to be in a lower bracket in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about that a lot of times on the show. I mean,
you're often not.
People that have prepared well for retirement, it's not a reality. Unfortunately, it's a big surprise when you're probably at the same bracket that you were working, maybe higher. If you've done a really good job in saving and accumulating assets, and you don't want to be there, so understand what that looks like. Have a plan, strategize to minimize taxes, and you've got a lot of exposure if you haven't set up some kind of a strategy to cover what happens if tax rates do end up going back up.
Yeah.
We know they're going to go back up unless Congress acts in 3 years.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, they're going up.
Of this. So, and beyond that, I mean, where they go, it's simple math, right? Money coming in, money going out. A lot more money going out than's coming in for
a whole lot
decades now. And that national debt just keeps growing. So,
And so you've got to have that on your radar. Yeah. You got to have that on your radar for sure. And then working with an advisor, I think, who's really in the right frame of mind to deal with multiple things. We talked about that, and maybe we'll just sit down and actually do a podcast here coming up maybe later this month on just the concept of finding the right person for you, because there's everybody and their brother is an advisor now. They can slap that label on themselves. And it doesn't mean that they're doing a bad job, but what they do may not be what you need. And so it's just like a doctor. You need to find the right person for what's going on. And that's why it's important to interview advisors. And honestly, advisors interview us as well, right? So if somebody comes in to see you for the first time, it's got to be a foot. Yeah. If they come in to see you for the first time for a consultation and an evaluation, it's a mutual review process, because you need to be able to help them. And they need to be able to receive that help. Some people want to get help, but then they really don't want to change, right? So you really need to kind of have those conversations, go through, get a strategy put together, talk with 1, 2, 3 advisors, but find the right one for you, take some action, and have a list of things to get prepared for retirement. That's the podcast this week. Thanks for hanging out with us, folks. As always, don't forget to subscribe on Apple or Google or Spotify or YouTube, whichever one you want. You can find all the information at philstaxhacks.com. That's philstaxhacks.com. My friend, enjoy the camping, and hope you beat the rain.
Yeah. I'm hoping. Looks like we will. I think it's moving back a little bit. So
there you go. All right. Well, then I'll see you next time right here on Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts. Phil?
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.